As you may know, so you are here because this is the discussion session 10 about the marine litter and how can MPAs be part of the solution. For this session, it was prepared and coordinated by Alessandra SENSI and Adriana Salazar from the Union for the Mediterranean, and I joined this coordination and prepare with them this session. And since I'm here, I will moderate this session, and as a rapporteur, because the organizer should have a report of this session, Mrs. Cristina Cardinetta and Florian Ivan will ensure the report of this session. Maybe we should just have some recall about this session, that according to the discussion that hopefully we will have, we could feed some related roadmap strategic objective, which are the strategic objective 3, how to ensure MPA management structure are effective and well coordinated across government and stakeholder to improve knowledge and ensure proper management of MPAs, and the strategic objective 4, which is about the capacity building of MPA manager, staff and stakeholder, and communicate on MPA value to large external audience to raise their awareness. So these are general, but we will try after to be more specific on the recommendation under the strategy. And also, thanks to colleague from the Union for the Mediterranean, we will have during the discussion some specific recommendation in relation with marine litter, MPA, and this general recommendation. Now, the session will be as we will have 3 online presentation, and the 4th one I will do share with you also a presentation. And we discuss, as I said, based on the recommendation that I will share here in the screen. So maybe I can give now the floor to Adriana Salazar, who will present on behalf of the Union for the Mediterranean, the Union for the Mediterranean labeled Plastic Buster Initiative and overall context.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, all. Thank you, Lobna. I hope you can see me, hear me well. Yes, so it's really a pleasure to be with you today on behalf of Ms. Alessandra SENSI, who, as you know, is head of sector for environment and blue economy at the Union for the Mediterranean, and who today is taking part in the 6th regional forum of the UFM, and unfortunately could not join us today. So I will really very briefly, just in 5 minutes or so, touch base on, let's say, the wider context of the UFM labeled Plastic Busters Initiative, and on marine litter and MPAs and marine litter in MPAs at the UFM. And then, of course, Ms. Fossi and Ms. VLACHOGIANNI will then take us really a little bit more through the specific, let's say, details as far as monitoring, prevention, and mitigation actions regarding marine litter under the Plastic Busters MPAs UFM labeled project. So let's go ahead. So now 2021, as you may know, has been really an exceptional year at the UFM, with the strengthening and renewal of commitments by the countries of the UFM across a number of key areas, namely 2 very, very important ministerial declarations directly related to the topics which bring us here today together. So marine litter and MPAs have been adopted by the countries of the UFM. Firstly, the UFM Ministerial on a Sustainable Blue Economy, adopted in February of this year, a first ministerial having taken place a few years ago in 2015. And secondly, the Ministerial on Environment and Climate Change Action of October of this year, which was agreed upon in Cairo, and which is also a second ministerial on the topic. So a second ministerial conference on environment and climate change. We can also very briefly just mention a third ministerial, which was also agreed upon this year on energy. which was agreed upon in Lisbon in June of this year. Now, regarding the sustainable blue economy and environment and climate change ministerials, they're also key really as they mark, let's say, the agreement of the countries of the UFM in shifting towards a green and circular economy, including, of course, sustainable consumption and production. The ministerial on blue economy, in particular, sustainable blue economy, not only expands the number of joint priorities agreed upon by the countries to 10, but also includes for the first time a specific section on the interactions between marine litter and the blue economy within a wider green and circular economy approach. As we will see, marine litter is really cross-cutting across both the UFM's environment and blue economy dossiers. It's of course very important to remember at this point that the ministerials are of course not static declarations. Of course, they provide, first of all, joint recommendations by the countries of the UFM on future actions, but they also are directly fed by the progress, let's say, on the ground. This means that the work, the outputs, the findings produced by and through the Plastic Busters initiative have directly fed the second round of ministerials on sustainable blue economy and on environment and climate change, producing a sort of virtuous circle, if you will. So here you see very briefly the 10 priorities of the 2021 ministerial on sustainable blue economy, including, of course, the priority in marine litter and blue economy interactions. Beyond this dedicated section that I was mentioning on interactions between marine litter and blue economy within a wider green circular economy approach, it's also important to note that also for the first time ever, we have a section on blue coastal and maritime tourism. As we know, tourism is one of the most important sectors in the region, both in terms of its size and environmental impacts, but also in terms of its potential to adopt more sustainable pathways. And of course, as we all know very well, this has been one of the most impacted sectors by the pandemic. Another important point here is to mention, of course, how and where MPAs are mentioned or treated in the 2021 ministerial on a sustainable blue economy. First of all, they're considered as regards or in the section on MSP and integrated coastal zone management, where the countries call for an increased coverage of MPAs as a means to better manage the increasing competition for marine and coastal space and resources. And secondly, they are considered as regards or in link with, of course, sustainable fisheries and aquaculture, where countries call again for a strengthening of MPAs to protect vulnerable species and habitats, namely fisheries, within an ecosystem-based approach. A very, very important point, the roadmap for the second declaration on a sustainable blue economy is now under preparation. This is a very important step. Let's say the first steps towards a roadmap include or will include a series of analyses on gaps and needs under each priority of the ministerial. Of course, very important also to mention that efforts to tackle marine litter in the UFM region as an ongoing process are, of course, undertaken in partnership with a number of key regional actors. The links with the Barcelona Convention are key, very important. As we know, the Barcelona Convention has a protocol specifically on land-based sources of pollution, but there are, of course, crucial links with the Blue Men Initiative or with the upcoming EU mission on oceans and seas. So moving on, yes, and I would just like to mention at this point, this I will share very quickly in the chat, or we'd like to bring to your attention a milestone report which has just been published very recently on advancing towards a sustainable blue economy in the Mediterranean region, published by the UFM in July of this year with the support of GIZ, and which really gives an overview kind of the state of the art of key blue economy sectors and cross-cutting themes, including marine litter. And incidentally, marine litter is approached or treated as a cross-cutting theme in this report. So moving on, as I was saying, moving on a little bit more into the UFM's environment dossier, I'd just like to highlight the UFM's political blessing of the 2030 Greener Med agenda, which is deployed through 3 axes. The first one on circular economy, a second on pollution, and a third on ecosystem conservation and restoration, looking in a way at MPAs as nature-based solutions. And marine litter, again, of course, breaches the 3 axes of the Greener Med agenda. In particular, we focus on marine litter impacts on economic sectors, the impacts of marine litter or marine litter monitoring and mitigation, marine litter within SCP, marine litter impacts on biodiversity, and marine litter in the context of the land-sea interface. As we all know, it doesn't make sense to look at marine litter in isolation. Globally, 80% of all marine litter consists of plastic and coming from land-based sources. And of course, the Mediterranean is one of the most affected seas by marine litter worldwide. But again, Ms. Fossi and Ms. Vlachogianni will focus a little bit more on marine litter monitoring and mitigation, on marine litter impacts on biodiversity, and on marine litter within the circular economy approach, including SCP, of course, and resource efficiency. So moving on, and I will finish quite shortly, but this I think is really the key, or maybe the most important slide of this short presentation. It's really key that we just take a very quick look at the 3 milestone projects, part of the Plastic Busters initiative, supporting, of course, the overall process and the UFM's advancements on marine litter. So these also are really milestone projects in terms of the links established as far as North-South cooperation. It's also important to note that this process really looks at both the micro and macro marine litter, let's say, dimensions, micro and macro marine litter monitoring and mitigation measures, as will be touched upon by Ms. Fossi and Ms. Vlachogianni. So the 3 projects are, first of all, the Interreg Med financed Plastic Busters, MPAs, labeled in 2016 and which really took off in 2018. It's very important to highlight here under this project that the scientific results of Plastic Busters MPAs are valid beyond MPAs. And this is something that possibly Ms. Fossi and Ms. Vlachogianni will also touch upon. And at this stage, I would also like to very briefly, of course, thank Interreg Med, who has really been instrumental in helping to frame this project's north-south, let's say, dimension. Also important to mention the project which we call the Common CBC, so Common standing for Coastal Management and Monitoring Network for Tackling Marine Litter in the Mediterranean Sea, which was financed in 2019, and which applies, just in one line, in one sentence, aims to apply integrated coastal management principles in the challenge of tackling marine litter, and namely does so through 5 pilot coastal areas in Italy, Tunisia, and Lebanon. And finally, we're very pleased to announce this is really quite recent news, that PBCAP will be financed under the capitalization call of CBC Med, which will finance 16 projects. And this was just announced or launched a few days ago in Barcelona. Finally, again, I would just like to underline that this is really a continuum, or we really view this as a continuum, of course, with the overall goal of progressively advancing towards reinforced cooperation on marine litter among the countries of the UFM. Here, just very quickly, and I will close just momentarily, you can see just a very quick mapping of the UFM's engagement to tackle marine litter. The link, of course, is very clearly established through Plastic Busters, but the UFM, of course, supports many other initiatives or many other relevant initiatives such as Blue Med, Switch Med, Med for Waste, etc. Just in closing, just so you know, the UFM manages 2 key platforms, one under the UFM's Blue Economy dossier and another under the UFM's Environment dossier, which serve as hubs for 2 really quite wide and very active communities of stakeholders and actors. I will leave the links in the chat. So with this, I will just close my short presentation. Thank you very much. And you have our contact details up on the screen, so don't hesitate to get in touch.
Okay. Thank you, Adriana.
Thank
you. I propose to have the presentation, and after maybe we collect all the questions to the presenter here. So now we move to the result of the Plastic Buster MPA marine litter project, and mainly the monitoring action. So I invite Cristina from the University di Siena in Italy to share the result of this project. You are muted, Cristina.
Very sorry for this starting. I would just like to say that obviously it's a great pleasure for myself and my colleague and friend Thomais VLACHOGIANNI to present the main outcome of our Plastic Buster initiative, and particularly on Plastic Buster MPA in this very important contest. And I would like to pass my great thanks to Lobna and to Adriana to have already clarify in a very specific way in which the main roadmap of the Plastic Buster initiative at Mediterranean scale. And as previously focused from Lobna, my main goal will be mainly to describe some of the new challenge and the new result obtained mainly from the Plastic Buster initiative on define the impact of marine litter on Mediterranean biodiversity. And I think is a very important context to describe in this specific, just a moment, a problem on, okay. So as mentioned before, it's very well known that the Mediterranean Sea is one of the most exposed area worldwide of the impact of marine litter. As ecology and ecotoxicology, one of our main goals is try to define the potential impact of macro and microplastic on the marine biodiversity. Here we have a very, I say, emblematic image of a whale from mother and calf that are swimming in one of the most important protected area of the Mediterranean Sea, the Pelagos Santorini, but probably one of the most polluted area. With all this concept in mind, several years ago in the medieval town of University of Siena was started the idea to the Plastic Buster initiative. And the idea was try to link together with the monitoring and mitigation and governance action the entire basin of the Mediterranean Sea. The flagship initiative was started in 2013 under the umbrella of the United Nations with the support of the DS10 network with the Sustainable Development Goal. But as mentioned from Adriana, one of the crucial aspects in the story of this initiative was in 2016 when the project was labeled from a Union for Mediterranean. And after this, I think we have a very strong support in all the story of the initiative from the project that we'll discuss today. So mainly the Plastic Buster MPA that was started in 2018, and we will see some result later on. But what is extremely important, and Adriana have already underlined, that the crucial aspect was to binding the South and the North Mediterranean country in the fighting of marine litter. And that was obtained recently with the support from the European Commission of two projects. The first one was the Common Project, and the recent one was the Plastic Buster Cap. As we mentioned before, we know obviously that one of the heart of the biodiversity in the Mediterranean Sea is represented from the marine protected area, and it is the main goal of this very important meeting, and especially of this workshop. But this marine protected area in many cases can be undergo for a strong anthropogenic pressure represent from marine litter. And this is exactly for this reason that in 2018, 15 partners and 17 associate partners decide together to enforce the link between science and policy interface, realizing this very wide and ambitious project called Plastic Buster MPAs. As you probably know, the main goal of the project is one of the novelty at the Mediterranean scale is to cover the whole management cycle of marine litter, starting from monitoring and then design specific mitigation action and moving to a very strong interface with the policy and transferring all the results at several areas, not only on the European side, but even on the south of Mediterranean Sea. And obviously this, I can say, circular approach was born completely in harmony and synchrony with the two main pillars at the Mediterranean level, such as the Marine Strategy Framework and the Barcelona Convention. Today, I would like to describe mainly some of the main output of the testing phase and the transferring phase. And I would like to enforce how all the monitoring activity that we have implemented in the project are directly linked with the specific mitigation action, and then Tommy will describe in detail this interlink approach. Concerning the monitoring activity, obviously we focus on two main strategies. The first strategy is to define the presence of marine litter in the different compartments, including macro and microplastics, so sea surface, sea floor, beach monitoring, using different approach. And I would like to say that this project probably is the first one that have used the new joint list of marine strategy in order to categorize the marine litter detected in beaches, and not only. But the real great novelty of the project, and why it's very important to discuss in this context, is the new methodology that we develop in order to produce an harmonized diagnosis of impact of marine litter on the Mediterranean biodiversity. And this concept was probably one of the main core of the Plastic Buster project, that was starting from the identification of marine litter bioindicators. And here, a few days ago already, we have discussed with Lobna in another contest that was ACOBAM's agreement, how is important when we define the concept of biodiversity to have a wide range of species that really represent as early warning sign of the exposure of marine litter in Mediterranean Sea. Here we have seen an example in which we see that probably one of the most exposed species to ingestion of marine litter in Mediterranean Sea is the sperm whale, and even the caretta, that is the common bioindicator used both in marine strategy and the IMAP, is a very important species to control. And for this point, we have produced a very challenging new approach to define the impact of bioindicators of macro and micro litter that was defined two different, with a very specific matrix in which we see on one side the different environment, so such as sea surface, coastal water, or open water, sea floor, and coastal line and beach sediment, in interface with the home range of the species. They're ranging from local scale bioindicator species, such as, for example, the Mytilus, from the most charismatic species that can represent the impact of marine litter in the interior basin, such as, for example, the endangered species of fin whale. So that is a really very strong novelty of the project. But another extremely important aspect that we try to cover in the Plastic Buster Consortium is try to cover one of the main gaps that coming even from the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. So as we know, in the Marine Strategy and also in the IMAP indicator, one of the most important aspects is to define the ingestion of marine litter on the candidate indicator species, caretta. But even we know that the measure of the oil ingestion cannot really reflect the real health status of the organism. And this is exactly why in the approach that we have realized in Plastic Buster MPA and then capitalized both in common indices and recent in Plastic Buster CAP is the new approach called the threefold monitoring approach, in which the measure of the gastrointestinal ingestion of marine litter, both in bioindicator species, environmental relevant species such as that one, but also on protected species, can be, I can say, amplified with the more specific detection of the transfer of eventual traces of chemicals from the plastic to the tissues of the organism. So the second level of investigation will be the detection of plastic additive. But the final, the most important one, will try to define the health status of the organism, measuring the biomarker responses and several endpoints. This approach can be used both on commercial species and in endangered species on the different projects. But what is very important to underline, and here is the link from diagnosis to mitigation, what we have done both in the testing phase and the transferring phase, from the diagnosis of the presence and the impact of marine litter in the the different marine protected area, we move to design specific mitigation action. And I think is that it represents a really challenging and powerful result of the project, and Tommy will describe later on. What we have produced until now, I would like to say that we have really produced a massive monitoring around the Mediterranean Sea, and this monitoring can be orientated both in the environment, in the species, subdivide the different marine protected area, investigate in terms of dimension. So we have in the testing phase two main small-scale MPAs such as Caprera and Zakynthos, one medium-scale MPA that is the Tuscan archipelago, and finally probably the largest area under protection of the Mediterranean Sea, that is the Spami Pelago Sanctuary. In the different area, we apply the threefold, we apply the harmonized monitoring approach, and we'll show you some results. But what is extremely important to underline that all this kind of monitoring activity was realized in synergy between MPA manager and researcher. And I think that is a very successful result of the project itself. And as probably you have seen, conference and meeting, a lot of result was produced from the Greek colleague in the monitoring of Zakynthos National Park, from the Spanish colleague in the monitoring of Caprera National Park, and from University of Siena, ISPRA, IFREMER, and the colleague of Corsica, we have produced a very pharaonic monitoring activity, both in Pelago Sanctuary, in the coastal archipelago and in Pelago Sanctuary. Just to briefly show some of the main output of this large monitoring that was realized in 2019, but the data of analysis in the lab was produced in 2020 and 2021 with some stop due to the COVID crisis. I think is represent a really new strategy, a new challenging how monitoring particularly pelagic environment. Monitoring pelagic environment is a very challenging approach, and in that project we realize a new sampling activity in which simultaneously we monitor the presence of microplastic on the sea surface, the survey of the macroliter in the area of monitoring, but in the same time we measure the presence of biota. That is a very powerful strategy that can allow the identify hotspot area and the risk for the species that living there. Just to giving the experimental design that we realize in Pelagos and PNAT, we produce a massive sampling of macro and microliter. We produce a massive sizing of biota, But what is extremely important, we collect with a non-lethal way and with the other approach, a huge number of bioindicator species that I have shown before, ranging from invertebrate to charismatic marine mammals, in order to identify the real potential impact of marine litter in biodiversity. Just to give very short flavors of the result, we realized a very nice model in collaboration with the consortium LAMA of the potential hotspot area of microplastic in the Pelagos Sanctuary, and we realized a complete overlapping between the model data and the field data. That was extremely important. But was I think it was the most challenging things. We try to identify which kind of risk can be exposed the species, ranging from the velella to the charismatic Balenottera physalus living in this area. And that was realized. We applied this new strategy of marine litter monitoring, so the threefold monitoring approach, and using the skin biopsy as one of the main approach to done. What I would like to say, we have found a very strong overlapping between the feeding ground of some species, such as the fin whale, and this hotspot of microplastic in the Pelagos Sanctuary. But the most promising data coming from the application of new emerging technology, such as omic technology, apply in the skin biopsy obtained in a non-lethal way in several cetacean species collected in the Mediterranean Sea, and that can be really allowed to define the real health status represent from multiple stress to which the animal are exposed. Here we have some preliminary result from metabolomic and exposome analysis in the vulnerable species Balenottera physalus. But the endangered species, not only the target of our research, I think very promising data coming from proposing for the first time neostonic bioindicators, such as, for example, velella as a potential indicator of the ingestion of microplastic and the presence in hotspot area. And even we have dedicated all the consortium a lot of effort to define the potential effect on commercial species that obviously link very much also with the one of the open questions concerning the impact on human health. Again, the Pelagos, we have collected a huge number of indicator species in the different area, and we have developed an intercalibration exercise to be sure that we use an harmonizing approach to compare data of ingestion in the entire experimental work, and we hope in the entire basin. But again, one of the most promising results could be obtained from the new technology, especially omics techniques, in which we focus the attention on a common species, the striped red mullet, collecting the different marine protected area. In this case, we applied for the first time the threefold monitoring approach, in which we define the ingestion of marine litter in the species, binding to the transferring of the level of phthalate on the tissues of the organism investigate, and finally, the main question, the toxicological effect. We have no time, but I would like to say that maybe in other conference, you can see some data concerning the common bioindicator caretta, in which we apply the threefold monitoring approach, the endangered species of seabirds, and the monitoring also not only in free-ranging organisms, but even in stranded cetacean. And one of the final message that I would like to leave, and then Tommy will come later on how it's important, this kind of monitoring. In the Pelagos Sanctuary, in the other area, we have produced a massive monitoring of marine litter in beaches that, using for the first time the joint list, can allow to identify not only the different category, but the percentage of land-based sources and sea-based sources, and the identification of the potential sources that allow to define specific mitigation action. That is very powerful approach. We have also experimented with the Mr. Plastic, I say with my heart, François Galgani, the monitoring marine littoral spot on beaches in the entire Pelagos sanctuary, and I think would be again a very promising techniques. And obviously all data can be extremely important to moving from the diagnosis to the mitigation. So one of our final goal is to define the risk prediction on the endangered species in the Pelagos sanctuary, and the lesson learned from this monitoring in Pelagos. I would like just to summarize that it's very important to use a simultaneous monitoring from floating microlitter, microplastic, and biota that is really allowed to found a correlation, for example, between macrolitter and microplastic, can allow to identify neostonic bioindicator, can allow to define also the model validation and the develop of new methodology to define the health status of endangered species in order to define a risk prediction, and finally the sources identification. And so obviously all these results need to be capitalized and transferred on other stakeholders, and especially in other marine protected area. So we strongly believe that the transferring phase that we are doing at the moment is essential in order to validate the methodology and to capitalize this approach on different areas. We report some marine protected area around the Med in which we have transfer all this approach, and how is important also to transfer a more wide scale. And here report some very nice experience that we have in the summer in Capo Milazzo and in Bonifacio. And what I would like just to ending my talk say that obviously the transferring and capitalization need to be realized inside the project area of plastic buster MPAs, but as plastic buster can be defined as initiative at Mediterranean level, we strongly enforce the transferring of all this new methodology on the South Mediterranean country with the Common and Plastic Buster project. We have already mentioned before, with Common, we capitalize the data in Tunisia, Italy, and Lebanon, and several of the methodology will be used also in the INDICIT too. And as mentioned before, final very successful result from our team is the capitalization with the plastic buster cap. That means capitalize the result of the previous project in other area in the Med, Italy, Greece, and Spain, but particularly Egypt, Tunisia, Lebanon, and Jordania. So that is, I think, a very, very challenging work. And I would like to thank all of you for your attention. And it's my pleasure to pass the floor to my colleague, Tommy. Thank you again.
Thank you, Christina. A very interesting and rich presentation as usual. So we continue with the same project, but we move to the prevention and mitigation action, and then invite Thomais to present this aspect. And after we will have some question on this project before doing my presentation on another project.
Thank you very much, Lobna, for passing the floor. Good afternoon to everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today. And thank you, Christina, for this very comprehensive presentation of our common project. Every time I'm amazed, I'm learning new things. So my intervention is going to focus on the marine litter prevention and mitigation actions implemented within the scope of the project. And I would like to provide you a little bit of background information on how this kind of activities started in the first place. They started back in 2015-16 when we had the first project aiming to support MPA managers in developing MPA-specific marine litter action plans. And together with those managers and within the context of the Act for Litter project, we created an inventory of marine litter measures. We jointly developed a decision-making tool in order to assist them towards prioritizing and shortlisting measures that could eventually be included into their marine litter action plans. And also for the first time, MPA managers were supported in order to generate fit-for-purpose marine litter data, primarily by carrying out beach litter surveys, which is a kind of a monitoring activity that can be implemented at different local contexts and with a relatively minimum level of expertise or even required equipment. So this was our starting point. And then eventually we had the opportunity through the Plastic Busters MPAs to support further these pilot MPAs in operationalizing their marine litter action plans. One of the unique elements of this approach was that together with the MPA managers, we clustered the different measures in three main categories based on the role that MPA managers can play in addressing the marine litter problem. So because there was a lot of discussions at the time highlighting that MPA managers are sort of powerless in terms of addressing this problem. So it was considered crucial to identify those measures that can be actually implemented directly by the MPA managers, while other measures were characterized by facilitating or promoting role when it comes to the MPA managers' involvement. And while doing that, we also clustered different types of measures that were inventoried into different major groups. So here you can have a look at the kind of measures we were looking at. So awareness raising campaigns, measures that related to port reception facilities, upcycling and recycling, extended producer responsibility schemes, banning of specific items and activities, replacement of single-use plastics, improvement of solid waste management practices, fishing for litter activities, and also the derelict fishing gear management schemes establishment. So these were more or less the major categories that were identified, and then clear-cut definitions were elaborated within the Plastic Busters MPAs project in order to ensure that all of us are on the same page when it comes to what these measures entail. So then, as I already mentioned, our Act for Litter pilot MPAs, but also the Plastic Busters pilot MPAs had the opportunity to move forwards and to move from a comprehensive diagnosis of the marine litter problem to the implementation of selected measures. And in fact, apart from the MPAs who tested some of the measures, we have additionally some other MPAs who replicated the tested approaches, and this is why I'm talking about testing and application actions. So far we have 14 pilot MPAs. 4 types of measures have been implemented on the ground in 12 testing and 8 replication actions. And here you can have a look at the types of measures that were tested and replicated. These include the setting up of a scheme to phase out the use of single-use plastics, the development of awareness-raising campaigns, the establishment of a derelict fishing gear management scheme, and also the implementation of the extended producer responsibility scheme. And more precisely, these are the measures that have been implemented to date. So some MPAs opted to operationalize the setting up of coastal food and a soups-free network of coastal food and beverage outlets. Others opted to focus on setting up the Adopt a Beach scheme or to establish a derelict fishing gear management scheme in order to tackle fisheries and, most importantly, aquaculture-related litter, which seems to be a problem in several MPAs. Then there were dedicated campaigns dealing with cigarette butts, which is another major problem in many beaches of coastal and marine protected areas. And Also to develop a network of collection points for beverage containers made of PET, can, or glass, to set up a reusable cup delivery system for beach bars, and finally to promote the sustainable management of mussel farming nets, where we had also some experimentation, and actually we're still having some experimentation with alternative materials for replacing the existing plastic mussel nests. Here you can have a look at the testing and replication locations. As you can see, these are located in Albania, in Croatia, in France, Italy, Greece, Slovenia, Spain, and also we were happy to collaborate with the newly established MPA in Platamuni in Montenegro. Now, obviously, I don't have the time to go into details when it comes to the different actions implemented. Therefore, I have focused in some selected actions that were implemented within the scope of MIO. In fact, for those of you who don't know MIO, we are a network of a federation of environmental NGOs from all over the Mediterranean, working for many years now on the topic of marine litter. So basically, these actions that I chose to highlight have to do with the engagement of a large number of stakeholders in the landscape parts Tunisian, dealing with the phase out of single-use plastics item, which is one of the biggest problems in that particular MPA. Another activity was related to the Thomais protected areas, quite a challenging area, also in terms of size, but also in terms of the issues that it faces as it is exposed to different pressures, including mussel farms, which actually around 80% of the mussel farms in Greece are located in this MPA, and the MPA is suffering by huge amounts of derelict mussel nets. And then some other featured actions include the establishment of a derelict fishing gear management scheme in the Platamuni MPA, and also the expansion of the soups-free network of coastal food and beverage outlets in another MPA in Slovenia. So what have we learned so far from the implementation of different types of demos? Actually, it's very difficult to share lessons learned from the different types of demos because they're very measure specific, but I try to somehow extract some common lessons learned from all the demos that could perhaps provide input to the later on discussions. And some of these lessons learned and key messages is, first of all, that MPAs can serve as a unifying force and a catalyst for change towards litter-free coasts and seas through the participatory elaboration and implementation of MPA-specific marine litter action plans and MPA-specific marine litter measures. Then another lesson learned is that MPAs can pave the way for improved policy implementation and legislation enforcement regarding marine litter. And in many cases, our MPA partners were pioneers when it comes to that. And also that MPAs can address the marine litter threat by directly themselves operationalizing targeted prevention and mitigation measures. And in addition to that, we have also learned or sort of kind of consolidated and other additional messages, like, for example, all stakeholders are knowledge agents themselves and should be treated as such in order to foster trust and mobilize action. And this was, for example, one of the major lessons learned in trying to solve the problem of mussel nets in Thomais Gulf, where the staff of aquaculture plants, but also the fishermen were brought together at the same table, and jointly solutions and potential problem-solving approaches were identified. Obviously, another lesson learned is that slashing plastic pollution and breaking away from a throwaway society requires a paradigm shift in our lifestyles and the transformation in the way we think and act. Last week we had a workshop in Ebro Delta, and one of our managers, one of the managers of the Delta, Xavi, was telling us how willing everyone is to be part of this transformation. But then when a small change is required from the different actors, then this is when the difficulties start, because nobody wants to make a small change because it's obviously uncomfortable. And this was one of the lessons learned, that even small changes can generate bigger results, but nevertheless, we all need to go through the uncomfortability phase in order to make the change happen. And of course, key to that end is ocean literacy and education for sustainable development. And last but not least, that marine litter is an example of a problem that does not have a one solution fits all, but it requires a combination of multi-stakeholder and multi-sectorial efforts across nations and disciplines in order to address the problem effectively. And when it comes to the critical success factors and the enabling conditions, here I try to somehow summarize them. And obviously, as very explicitly mentioned by Cristina, we need to have a comprehensive diagnosis of the problem, and we need to have fit-for-purpose data that can really support the policy and decision-making and can drive the selection and even the operationalization of the different prevention and mitigation actions. Then another important factor is participatory decision-making process and bottom-up approaches. We are somehow happy to have at this very moment in time all the top-down decisions required in order to really push forward actions to prevent and mitigate the problem of marine litter, in particular plastic pollution and single-use plastics. So now what we need is to involve the different societal groups in identifying the best, the most relevant solutions, the most effective solutions, and the most socially accepted solutions, and then operationalize them on the ground. And this, of course, brings us to feasible and effective solutions. There is a wide range of solutions that we can look at, but at the end of the day, the local context is what defines which solutions can work better than others and which solutions can yield the optimum results. Coordination and multi-level actions are key. And all these have to be supported, have to be consolidated, and have to be brought together by methodologically sound processes. And in fact, this is what we have tried to do within the Plastic Buses MPAs project in order to ensure enhanced replication actions and enhance the sustainability of the project results. Therefore, we have tried to consolidate all this experience into a set of comprehensive guidelines that provide step-by-step support on how to implement the tested measures. And in addition to that, we are planning to launch before the end of the project an e-learning, a dedicated e-learning module that will provide further support to MPA managers, but also other actors who want to act either at MPA level or other local context in terms of implementing similar actions. Obviously, we have been implementing transferring activities, and one of these has been a capitalization event that we held in Dubrovnik. Last week, as I mentioned, we had a mutual learning event in Ebro Delta, which brought together many MPAs from all over the Mediterranean, but also decision makers and institutional actors in order to see what is the best way forward and in order to learn from one another and design joint activities. And so now what is required, apart from building synergies with ongoing projects and initiatives, is follow-up projects that will embed all this knowledge, all this experience within their daily operations. And with that, I would like to close my interventions by simply stating those recommendations that Plastic Buses MPA's experience can have a fundamental input. And I assume that this will be the topic of discussion of the next session. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Thomais. So indeed, this marine litter should have this participatory approach to tackle this marine litter issue. I think that the Plastic Buster MPA project, it's among the success projects that should be, its result should be capitalized and replicated in other area in the Mediterranean. I don't know if here in the room there is any question, comment on this two presentation. Otherwise, if in the Zoom chat.
Thank you so much. Yes, we have a question from Ida about the species that are taken into account in the monitoring. So maybe we will give the floor to Ida. Could you please open your mic, Ida, and ask your question?
Yes, good afternoon,
please
everyone.
Introduce yourself, Ida.
Yeah, oui, tout à fait. Bonjour à tous, est-ce que tout le monde m'entend?
Oui, c'est bon.
Je suis... bon, je vais parler en français ou en anglais?
Vas-y, il y a une interprétation simultanée. Ok.
Je suis Aïda Denader et je suis consultante freelance. Je travaille sur les AMP et notamment sur les oiseaux marins. Et donc, ma question concerne évidemment les oiseaux marins. Et j'ai relevé que parmi les espèces, parmi la biota étudiée dans le cadre du projet, et la composante oiseaux marins manquait. Donc, voilà, ma question était pourquoi les oiseaux marins n'ont pas été considérés parmi la mégafaune marine étudiée qui concernait surtout les tortues et les poissons. Surtout que les AMP constituent pour les oiseaux marins un habitat crucial parce qu'en général, ce sont leurs zones de reproduction. Donc,
merci, Aïd. Oui.
Voilà. Merci, Lobna.
Donc, I think, Christina, could you reply to this question?
Yes, I reply in English, is okay?
Yes.
You heard me? Okay. So Aida, thank you very much for your question, but probably you miss one of my 1,000 slides. I say that birds, it's one of the topic of our research. And personally, I was one of the experts of study and developing biomarker on birds a lot of years ago. So it's you touch a subject that is very close to my heart. So definitely we include birds as bioindicators. And if you are familiar with this topic in terms of interaction of birds and marine litter, you probably know that in marine strategy framework, the common bioindicator in the North Sea is the Fulmar glacialis, and is one of the species that is more exposed to the ingestion of marine litter. So there is a huge number of data concerning Fulmar. Concerning Mediterranean Sea, obviously Fulmar is not of our fantastic Mediterranean, is why the caretta was officially the species proposed as indicator both from the marine strategy framework and from the Barcelona Convention. And here with Lobna, we have one of the main experts of this field in the Med. But as I mentioned before, one of our goals is exactly to focus on other species. And some of the species that we have investigated is the Cory seawater, Colinectris diomedea. Colinectris diomedea can be probably one of the most interesting species in the Med for the ingestion of marine litter. In fact, in some specimens found stranded along the Tuscany coast, we have found a huge number of microplastic. So I totally agree that focusing on bird species, both in terms of ingestion, but not only in terms of effect, in terms of detection, transferring of chemical tissues, and detection toxicological effect, can be a new frontier of bioindicator species to investigate, and is one of the core of our project. I hope I have answered. Maybe if you are interested, we can do some bilateral discussion in the next day.
Okay, thank you, Cristina. Thank you. So I don't know if there is any other. Yes, please. Just I will give you another.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Azra Vukovic, and I'm representing NGO Green Home from Montenegro. Actually, I wanted to thank you for the great presentation. It was very interesting to hear all these studies that were done in the frame of the project that was part of it. In one part, Tommy was mentioning Platamuni, that is the newest marine protected area in our country, and I wanted to hear maybe a little bit more about this, and to offer maybe partnership in the terms of possible future cooperation, because me personally and my organization, we are very interested in this topic and this issue, and we could maybe think about some joint project or collaboration in the topic of marine litter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for this question. I don't know, did you hear this, Thomais?
Yes, of course, okay. I heard it, and it's a pleasure to see Azra once again. It's been a couple of years that we haven't seen each other, but we keep track of each other's activities through time. So yeah, I don't know if I can elaborate a bit further on the Platamuni MPA. I mean, it was, I don't know, like a few months ago established or announced its establishment, and InterECMED was very much interested in supporting this MPA and supporting an IPA country in implementing activities within the InterECMED scope, and therefore we had a concrete opportunity through the transferring activities of the Plastic Buses MPAs project to launch an international, a Mediterranean-wide call, and we were really happy to see that also the Institute of Marine Biology of Kotor, if I'm not mistaken, applied in order to work on operationalizing this the derelict fishing gear management scheme in this MPA, and it was coupled with some seafloor monitoring activities in order then to sort of support and further facilitate targeted removal actions and targeted collection actions and a more sustainable management of those very dangerous related items for the area. So this is as much as I can say about that. And of course, obviously, we would be happy to share with you the final report of this activity and to collaborate on a future project. That would be simply awesome. And maybe this way to have also the opportunity to visit this newly established MPA. So thank you for the question and for the intervention.
Thank you, Thomais, for this replay. So I have to do my presentation now, and I will do it fastly to have some time to discuss the recommendation. So we move to the last presentation. It will be about a EU-funded marine litter project. This project is coordinated by the Mediterranean Action Plan and some component like SCP-RACA, SPARACA, and RAMPEC, and MEDPOL, of course, which is the main program of the Mediterranean Action Plan for the pollution. So this project has two phases. One phase that already achieved, and this is what is the main of my presentation is to give you to share with you the output and the result of this first phase of this project, which is supported the contracting party to the Barcelona Convention, mainly from the South Mediterranean region, as you see here in the map, to implement the regional plan on marine litter management. This regional plan, which is the first ever legally binding instrument of its kind in the region, which is adopted by all the contracting party to the Barcelona Convention. So here, as you see that the project has been implemented in 7 Mediterranean, South Mediterranean country, and not all the activity has been achieved in this country. So we will see here that we may focus on 3 major output. Output A, to assist the implementation of the regional plan on marine litter management, and the focus has been given to the 5 most common marine litter measure that I will develop it, in my presentation. Concerning the output B, it was in relation to the implementation of harmonized approach at regional and sub-regional level to reduce and to prevent marine litter generation from land-based and sea-based sources, including pilot prevention. And here there was a guideline adopted and presented during many meetings of the Barcelona Convention process. And for the third output, it focused on how to assist the establishment of regional and bilateral cooperation mechanism with other relevant actors, such as the European Regional Sea Convention, and to enhance synergy on the implementation of this litter action plan. And during the first phase, there was a good collaboration with the Black Sea Commission. I would like to say also that within this project, a Mediterranean marine litter node and platform was created, and where all the output, achievement, and many guidelines are shared here, and you can access and see this output and tools. Now, as I said, there is activity that has been implemented to support 5 marine litter pilot, and among these 5 pilot activity, through this project, we adopt the beach measure, and this measure is comprise action related to the beach cleaning and beach marine litter monitoring program, aiming to support and enhance the national marine litter monitoring program. And here we succeed through this project to implement monitoring adopt beach measure in 12 sites in many countries in South Mediterranean, like Lebanon, Libya, and Morocco. Also, we implement a second measure, which is in relation with fishing for litter. And this measure aimed to reduce the amount of marine litter at sea. And really, it was based on a voluntary scheme with the fishermen and with the fishery and the industry and harbor at local authority. So here within the project, we succeed to have 3 pilot fishing for litter activity implemented in Morocco and Libya. Concerning the management of sea-based litter in port, here with the support of RAMPEC, we also determined the application of charge at a reasonable cost for the use of port reception facility, when it was really easy to implement it, and it was done in 4 marina in Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia, and Libya has benefited for a meeting held in Tunisia. The first activity, it was about the phasing out single use plastic bag and advancing on extended producer responsibility. And here it was the responsibility of SCPRAC to do this work in Algeria, Egypt, Lebanon, Morocco, and Tunisia, where they received technical assistance to address this problem and to enhance the public authority capacity on phasing out this single-use plastic bag and promoting the extended producer responsibility. And among the success story of this project is that in Tunisia, a governmental decree has been approved and published in the official journal of the Republic of Tunisia, about this phasing out the single use of plastic bag in the les grandes surfaces. So next, concerning the reducing impact of marine litter in biota, and here this component has been coordinated by SPARAC, and as already presented by Cristina, also in the Barcelona Convention, the work has been done to identify the most representative species for the monitoring of candidate indicator 24, which is the trend in the amount of litter ingested or entangling marine organism. And here, the species identified is the carita based on a lot of constraints that are presented in the document that is available in the SPARAC website. And for this, we developed, in collaboration with another EU project, a protocol for the monitoring of this interaction between marine litter and marine turtle. And of course, we did capacity building to the country on how to implement this protocol. We also developed an operational strategy for monitoring candidate indicator, and within the phase 1 of this project, we propose a design of Mediterranean monitoring network for the candidate indicator. And based on all the results of the first phase of this project, we succeed to have the phase 2 of project that started in 2021 until 2023, and with the same objective is to reduce and prevent the generation of marine litter in the Mediterranean, but during this phase, through an expanded implementation of key reduction and prevention measures as provided in the regional plan on marine litter management, which is already adopted and updated recently within the Barcelona Convention. So we will expand the implementation of some selected, already mentioned during my presentation, measure in terms of geographical scope and impact, and we will continue to develop the IMAP candidate indicator 24, which is the monitoring of this interaction between marine turtle and the marine litter, and to have this operational strategy adapted at national level, and of course to contribute to achieving the reduction environmental target as agreed by the contracting party of the Barcelona Convention. So the expected result of this project is to support the monitoring and assessment in the Mediterranean. So as said by Cristina, there is this measure that should be done after prevention and mitigation. We should monitor and assess the impact of marine litter in the Mediterranean Sea. We will continue upscaling and expansion of pilot project implementation and any related measure of the marine litter regional plan. And of course, we will continue enhance this cooperation with the Black Sea Commission, but also with the GFCM concerning the fishing for litter. I think that through this project, and among the lesson learned, we can see that using existing partnership mechanism initiative as implementing partner is an effective advantage to ensure long-term result. So having this context of Barcelona Convention and all the coordinator partner was facilitate and allow the establishment of mechanism and a process which already include key body like the component, the map for focal point, the conference through this process. Also, among the promotion of different stakeholder, ministry and agency, other than environmental and industry, is important to enhance close collaboration among decision maker, sector and actor, and therefore increase project result sustainability. And as already presented by Cristina, I think that it should have this synergy between the manager, the scientist, and the decision maker to tackle the marine litter problem. So the process for development and implementation of reduction and prevention measure should be further supported by national strategy and program, and should be also facilitated through multiple resources to finance the implementation. I think I will stop here and come back to the recommendation proposed by our colleague from the Union for the Mediterranean to be in line with this discussion session. So maybe we should come back to the presentation of session, the presentation about the presentation session, the pair. Meanwhile, I don't know if you have any question or comment about the marine litter project. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much all for the presentation. It was really interesting. I'm Lucille Courtial from the BMED Association. I have a question more about the link between MPAs and marine litter. I mean, is the fact that we're working in a specific area with specific regulations a leverage to implement the different measures that we saw? And if yes, how so? And I think the second part of the question is MPAs are also under the influence of other area outside the MPAs and getting marine litter from outside the MPA. So how do we deal with that when we work on the MPA and what we're trying to fight the pollution inside the MPA? How do you deal with the outside, and how is it a leverage to implement the different measures?
Okay. I don't know if our colleague here present, no? Okay. No, the colleague here, Cristina or Thomais or Adriana, I think. Yes.
Well,
if
you want to say me a couple of words, actually the general idea is exactly because of the, let's say, the input or the releases or the fact that the MPAs are influenced by litter that arrives from areas outside the protected area. Okay, this was perhaps our starting point because it made the MPA managers feel powerless. Okay, in many cases. However, through the Act for Litter and eventually through the plastic busters, what we showed is, and what was kind of highlighted, is the fact that on the one side, a lot of litter is generated within the MPAs, in particular, many Mediterranean MPAs. We're talking about massive MPAs in terms of size. Okay, so definitely a lot of the litter that is found in these MPAs originates from the MPAs within the borders of the MPA themselves, and there is where the managers can undertake concrete action on the ground to prevent or mitigate the marine litter effects. Now, when it comes to the additional sources, so for example, let's say that there is a river, okay, that release, and rivers, you know, it can be a national river, but it could be also a transboundary river, which is the case of Thomais Gulf. Okay, things are extremely challenging, and in some cases the MPAs explored the possibility of, you know, talking and organizing fora along the river basin, bringing together the different stakeholders and trying to define joint solutions to the problem. But obviously, you can perhaps use the fact that you have your house in order, let's say, by house I mean the MPA itself, in order to use that as leverage in trying to convince also those who are surrounding the MPA on undertaking action. This, for example, could be one nice entry point. Obviously, this is, of course, in relatively ideal situations. We don't live in an ideal world, and there are different variations of this scenario, but still, we believe, and we showed actually, that the action that MPA managers have taken on the ground can be used as leverage to bring other stakeholders on board, doing similar actions upstream perhaps, or in more remote areas. So this is at least our experience from the project. I don't know if Christina would like to complement that.
I think it's perfect for me, your answer. Maybe, I don't know if there is some other question, if we have a few minutes.
Okay. Just may I add something that concerning the monitoring implementation within the IMAP ECAP, which is a process under the Barcelona Convention. Now we will implement monitoring program in 2 areas to have this comparison. So in a protected area, marine protected area, and in another area with higher level of impact, and to test the protocol and the implementation of harmonized protocol. And after we will compare this, the result obtained from these 2 kind of area. Now I give the floor to Abdelmoula.
Thank you, Abdelmoula Hamza from the Ministry of Environment in Libya. Thank you for all the presenters. Enjoyed the session, and I wish you all the best for the next phases of the project. I have I have one comment and one question. One comment, I'm joining my voice with Aida Abdelnader, because we are both interested in seabirds. And I wish in future the Corey shearwater, for example, can be an example of indicator species for marine litter, because they are targeting a different layer of the water column from the sea turtles. Sea turtles usually are bottom feeders, and these are surface feeders, and they are more exposed to, they are more mobile, they are more exposed to marine litter in general, and we wish to add them in future as a species indicator. This is the comment. The question for Lobna is this, I haven't seen the guidelines for the turtle beach monitoring that you presented for the marine litter in turtles in general. But did that included also the macro and microplastic on the nesting beaches, and how it can impact in future the nest temperature for sea turtles? There are some studies from 2017 up to now saying that there might be a potential impact of heat acquiring by plastics within the nest of sea turtle that can worsen the situation of the sex ratio in sea turtles. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdelmo. In fact, it is a protocol to monitor the interaction between marine turtle and marine litter, even ingested or entangled. And the protocol is, as I remember, it's there is 2 parts. The first part is a standardized collection of data, and the other is when you are doing a necropsy and how to classify, to classify the plastic, found in the digestive of the sea turtle. So I think you should see this protocol, and I don't know if Christina may add something, but what I have to underline that this protocol is harmonized with the one already implemented at the European level, because they started before the South Mediterranean country to implement. And we try to have harmonized protocol as possible to implement this protocol. So maybe I can provide you with this protocol and come back to us, because within the Barcelona Convention, this indicator is candidate until now, is candidate, and we are discussing even the way of how to implement the monitoring, the national monitoring. And during the second phase of the marine litter project, we will do this monitoring program in Tunisia and Lebanon, and to see the applicability of this protocol and how the engagement and the involvement of the stakeholder in this country. Is it okay, Christina? Should you want to add something? Okay.
No, I totally enforce what you say, both in terms of harmonization of methodology. I think is our master. I think all people that working on Mediterranean Sea, we strongly believe that we have to work with an harmonized protocol, and I think the strong interlink between the methodology of marine strategy framework and IMAP is a symbolic of this. And hence again, as our friend underlined the importance of birds as a potential indicator, we strongly believe that Colinectris Diomedea, I like very much the Latin name, it can be one very important candidate. Even is not very easy to find stranded specimen. Is why caretta obviously is proposed as the common indicator, because it's very often to found stranded caretta is not so often found stranded Cornish water, at least in our area. Maybe another potential use of bird would be with the shag, the nest of shag. There is several studies that show that in the nest of shag you can monitor the presence of litter, and so indirectly the input of the animals.
Okay, thank you. I think we should, to be in line with the organization of this session, we could go now to the recommendation. Because the rapporteur have to, in fact, here are the recommendations from the roadmap. It is recommendation 3.4 about the harmonization of all Mediterranean initiatives related to standardization of social ecological monitoring method and management effectiveness assessment, example, the Barcelona Convention, IMAP, and EU directive, and how to encourage the country to adopt and institutionalize them to ensure their use by MPA manager and researcher. I will not read this, but maybe we will go to the, no? We don't have here the, il n'y a que ça dans la présentation. Okay. Because our colleague proposed some other specific, sorry for this. Other specific recommendation, maybe I have to see, to read them. And if you agree on this, sorry, it is not included in this presentation, but there is an action to achieve roadmap recommendation. And here we suggest as first recommendation to ensure the creation of regular training program from scientists to MPA staff on marine litter monitoring and mitigation measure. As a second recommendation, ensure adequate fund and staffing are provided to MPA management body to purchase the basic set of equipment needed for regular marine litter monitoring. And the third, set up a small funding scheme to ease the collaboration between MPA staff and scientific researchers with the goal of collaborating in conducting those monitoring activity and analysis that MPA cannot conduct themselves. As I said, this is a specific recommendation, but it is generated and in relation with this. So I don't know if you have any feedback or reaction about this recommendation and what I said now, and maybe I have to end with two other recommendation is to ensure that the harmonized marine litter monitoring and mitigation plan be integrated in or upscale to as much med MPA as possible. Yes, here. Okay, thank you, Alessandra.
So we just put them up on the screen, but I think they've been shared also in the chat.
Yes, thank you. So I don't know if you have any comment about if you agree already on this based on the presentation that we have during this the discussion session. So I think that this recommendation could be added within the recommendation already proposed within the MPA roadmap concerning the marine litter monitoring, mitigation, harmonization, and in relation with the MPA management. So if you agree, the reporter will communicate this to the organizer of the forum to be taken into consideration within the MPA roadmap. I see that you are okay with this. So thank you. Thank you very much for the presenter here. And thank you for the technical support and the interpreter who ensure the interpretation simultaneous. We don't have anything here, nothing. Okay, thank you. Thank you again, and bye-bye.